Hello, welcome to Eurasia Group's Facebook live feed. I'm Alexander Clement, a director of research at Eurasia Group, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague Carlos Peterson. Today we'll be talking about the implications of Donald Trump's foreign policy, or what we can divine about a likely foreign policy, towards two of the most important relationships for the United States. One, a current friend, the other, a current adversary. To start with the friend. Mexico played a major role in the election campaign. Donald Trump launched his candidacy largely on the back of attacking Mexican immigrants, made the idea of tearing up trade deals with Mexico and combating immigration from Mexico a major part of his platform, and he's pledged in the first 100 days to do something about the relationship with Mexico. The Mexican peso has tanked on his election, and here to tell us a little bit more about why that is Carlos Peterson, who is a researcher in our lead analyst on Mexico.
Thank you, Alex. No, thank you very much for the invitation. And first of all, I think the decline of the peso is the best indicator of how important this election is between in the Mexico-U.S. relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Mexico exports, 80% of its exports go to the U.S. Mm-hmm. and 60% of its imports come from the U.S. Mm-hmm. So the markets are looking at this election and the negativity towards Mexico as a very negative signpost, and that's why the peso has depreciated so much. Just after the Donald Trump was elected, the peso plunged 13% overnight. Mm-hmm. So obviously everyone is seeing this as a bad signal.
Mm-hmm. How much can a President Trump do about NAFTA in particular, right? NAFTA, I mean, the trade relationship in general is something he's focused on, but NAFTA, he's called, I think, the worst deal of any kind in human history, or some modest statement of the kind. And so NAFTA is really in the crosshairs. What can President Trump do on NAFTA, and in what time frame?
Yeah, there is a specific clause in NAFTA that says that the executive power of any of the three parties, Mexico, Canada, or the U.S., have the ability to repeal the treaty or pull out of the treaty with a 6 months advance. Mm-hmm. They just have to basically send a letter to the other parties of the treaty and telling them, you know what, this is it. We're not completely sure if that is that's so easily to be done. It would probably require some type of vote in Congress here in the U.S. because NAFTA was voted into law by the Senate. Mm-hmm. But still, that power that the executive power has at least manages and makes the other parties to come to the table and negotiate the details of the deal again. And that's what Donald Trump wants. Mm-hmm. He maybe not just want to repeal it, he wants to change it and claim that he was able to do it.
Right. One of President-elect Trump's maybe the only foreign trip he made during the election campaign was, in fact, to Mexico to meet with current President Peña Nieto. Yeah. How has the U.S. presidential campaign affected domestic Mexican politics, or how has Trump's victory in the election, how will that affect domestic politics in Mexico?
Yeah, first of all, as we have been discussing, the campaign in Mexico was very negatively perceived. Everyone was not a very strong supporter of Donald Trump. They were really cheering for Hillary Clinton. And Peña Nieto's invitation of Donald Trump to Mexico was taken very badly by the population in general, right? Mm-hmm. So this invitation, who was the finance minister at the time, Luis Videgaray, was the one that thought about this plan of inviting Donald Trump, forced him to resign right after he went to the country, right? Now, analysts and people at the government are claiming that it might not be such a bad idea to have Donald Trump in the country. And what the government is saying, that it was one of the first steps towards a possible scenario and now a reality, and now how to work together or closer to the administration.
Pretty smart now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as it looked in the past. Obviously, the Mexican population and voters in general felt aggravated by the president, by Peña Nieto, which is fairly unpopular. His approval ratings are right now on around 23%, mm-hmm. and these were the numbers before Trump was invited. There mm-hmm. haven't been new numbers really, so he's fairly unpopular. And then having invited someone as unpopular to Mexico obviously had a very negative reaction from the public. So we will have to see if the people understand that it wasn't such a bad idea, or if they continue to think that we shouldn't be like sitting in the table with someone.
So how, I mean, if we assume that U.S.-Mexico economic relations might take a turn for the worse under a Trump presidency, how does that affect Mexican politics going forward? There's a presidential election in Mexico in 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. First of all, I think it's hard to imagine Donald Trump pulling back from what he has said about Mexico and about NAFTA, etc. So this nationalistic, populist type of discourse is going to keep on resonating, and it's going to keep on infuriating some people in Mexico, right? So the potential candidates and the candidates of the 2018 presidential election in Mexico are going, the ones that are going to be benefited by this are the ones that can claim a more nationalistic perspective, a more reactive response to this type of claims. And we see Andrés Manuel López Obrador, leftist leader, as the one that has the best capacity to capture this discontent and to capture this nationalist discourse, and will benefit and make him very competitive in the 2018 presidential run.
Who's going to pay for the wall?
Who's going to pay for the wall? That's a big question. We don't know even if the wall is going to be built.
Or if it's even going to be a wall.
Even if it's going to be a wall, maybe it's something else. And it's hard to know. What we think that could happen is Donald Trump trying to use like arguments around like Mexico paying not necessarily like out of the pocket from there, but like taking money that was going to go to Mexico. Remittances was one strategy that he mentioned to take some money from there, or other tariffs and duties from products that are being exported to Mexico. Maybe that's how he will claim that Mexico is paying for it.
Okay. Well, moving, I have to give Carlos credit for this transition, but Carlos said before, if we're going to move from Mexico to talking about Russia, we should talk about moving from the what was it?
The ex to the new
girlfriend. The
girlfriend.
ex to the new girlfriend. So moving from the ex to the potential new girlfriend. And I should remind you, by the way, that we're taking your questions on this Facebook Live feed. So I think with Russia, there's a relationship that, unlike Mexico, can actually get a lot better pretty quickly. Trump hasn't given us a whole lot of detail about what his foreign policy will look like, but he's certainly laid out a worldview that is one that I think that Russia will find accommodating. Right? Trump has spoken about reviewing the usefulness of NATO. He supported Brexit, which obviously is a blow to the coherence of the European Union. He's said that fighting Islamic terrorism is the #1 thing to do in Syria. He's suggested that Russia's annexation of Crimea in Ukraine was actually okay. So all of those things are certainly viewpoints that harmonize, at the very least, with Russia's perception of its own foreign policy interests. So I think we could certainly see the relationship improve very quickly. I think it's also worth noting that we'll be dealing with two presidents who are both very kind of headstrong, temperamental, nationalist types of figures. So even if we do see a warming of relations initially, any glitches in the relationship or perceived slights or insults between these two guys, I think could escalate very quickly. I mean, neither of these two guys are, as a matter of personal kind of personality and I guess politics, we'll see with Trump, they're not the type to shy away from a fight. And I think that could be volatile in a situation with two nuclear superpowers. Let's go to some questions now. We have a question here from Monica Villalobos, who asks, who will be Mexico's new trade partner then? I guess the idea is if trade with the U.S. declines, where else can Mexico go for new partners? Very good question.
That's a great question. Yes, it's hard to see Mexico going elsewhere, right? The integration between Mexico and the U.S. has been increasing and going deeper and deeper for the last 30 years. Mexico approved a bunch of structural reforms at the beginning of Peña Nieto administration that actually look for a deeper integration. They are opening up the energy sector, and many U.S. companies are going to start investing in Mexico, and the natural gas pipelines now are running between the two countries, and the trajectory suggests that this integration should keep on growing. Right now, obviously, this goes into a big question mark. What we expect is more about like trade freezing and investments stopping, not necessarily going somewhere else.
So trade would stay at the same level rather than keep increasing.
Exactly, at a higher cost, because now you have to pay some tariffs, some duties to export to the U.S. that will be imposed through NAFTA.
Is Europe an option for export? I mean, how much does Mexico?
Mexico has another big of its biggest trade partners in Europe, but still the advantages of Mexico of exporting to the U.S. are because of its proximity and how the whole value chain has been built. Mexico and then Europe do not have this same type of infrastructure, obviously, and it will not be that easy to send Mexican products there.
Great. Okay, well, our time is just about up. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this Eurasia Live Facebook Live feed. I'm Alexander Clement, Director of Research at Eurasia Group. I'm joined by Carlos Peterson, our lead Mexico analyst. And for more views on Mexico, Russia, Trump, and many other subjects, you can visit us online at eurasiagroup.net. Thanks very much.